The Dallas Cowboys get an ugly win over the Tennessee Titans in Week 17. We discuss it right now on Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast
Locked
Network, your team every day.
On. Locked on. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, the Cowboys have gotten to 12 wins yet again in a very ugly game in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing to winning 12 games is that sometimes you got to win the ugly ones. You're going to play in them. Like, it's not going to be clean games in all 18 weeks, in all 17 games that you play. So the good teams win these games. And the Cowboys, look, I mean, they had backups everywhere. Everybody was falling down. There's back-to-back short week, terrible field that was rained on. There's every excuse for both of these sides. Yeah, he's still covered, and I think it's just it's easy to make excuses for why the Cowboys should win big time. They have a bunch of backups in there, and there's lots of reasons to for the Cowboys to feel good about it. But it's still difficult to go out there and win a game in the NFL on the road, and especially late in the season when guys are banged up and leaving. I think the injuries make that difficult for both sides too. I think that's something that you have to look into.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to sit here and tell you that was the most convincing win the Cowboys had all season, or they look crisp, or you should suddenly feel better about their playoff chances because of a game like this. But at the same time, it's a short week. Dallas, I'm sure, didn't know who the starting quarterback was going to be until this afternoon when we found out that Josh Dobbs was going to be it. So they probably were scrambling to find any preseason film that they could find on Dobbs.
Yeah.
And it's all new players on defense. Whatever. You win by 14, you get out of there. Hopefully there's not too many injuries coming out of this one outside of Tyler Biadasz, but you got to win, and that's all that really mattered.
Yeah, I think the Tyler Biadasz injury is obviously the most important thing about this whole game, to be honest.
Which we can talk about a little bit. So he went down, I think it was it late in the third quarter? Very late in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Got rolled up on, came back to the sideline, had a boot on his ankle. Sounds like it's a high ankle sprain, which...
That's dodging a bullet, man.
Well,
in a lot of ways.
He grabbed his knee. That was what I was concerned about. And which is weird. You actually see that a lot of times with these guys when they get high ankle sprains. They just kind of grab their knee, but it's actually like a up on the ankle. But anyways, for an offensive lineman, I've seen guys come back in like 2 to 3 weeks with that injury. It's not as bad for compared to like a receiver, but there's still a decent chance he misses round 1 of the playoffs.
Definitely. I think that it's interior. I think with interior offensive linemen, it's a little bit easier, because of just the restricted motion that you have inside. You're moving quickly, but you're not moving far. So I think it's a little bit easier to kind of hide that a little bit from what I understand. But yeah, it's possible to come back in that short of time. I think I've seen it before with offensive linemen. Offensive linemen seem to be the position that if you're going to have a high ankle sprain that offensive line is probably the position to have it. But that is still a very tall order to ask him to come back on such short notice. And honestly, it's a tough call too if he's going to have to come back in his first game is against Vita Vea inside. Yeah.
The good news is because this happened on a Thursday, and the Cowboys might have a meaningless game next week. You can rest him, give him, I don't know how many days that would be, 15, 16 days to get ready for that game. And if he's not ready for that one and you happen to beat probably Tampa Bay, maybe he's ready for the divisional round. But as we saw tonight, Dallas does have options. Connor McGovern played center to finish out the game. You saw Jason Peters playing left tackle. Tyler Smith is playing left guard. there's a chance that actually might just be their best 5 on the field at the same time. I mean, obviously we hate this for Tyler Biadasz, but there's a chance that those might just be your best 5 offensive linemen.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how well Jason Peters can continue to hold up, because I mean he looked very good tonight at left tackle, and it was exactly where he is tough to say at times, right? Because last time we saw him was at right tackle, and it was kind of the second week of it, and it wasn't as good as he had looked the first week. He had to step in and play right tackle for Terrence Steele. So to kind of see him out there playing left tackle was good. And I thought he had some good snaps out there from what my eyes could see, the broadcast tape. I think that's honestly going to be the kind of weak link there. Connor McGovern, I think he's taken enough snaps at center. He obviously has enough experience and playtime experience to, physically hold up inside. There's a chance that maybe he's even better physically inside there just because he's a little bit stronger. I think the question becomes about the calls, about the snaps and that sort of thing, and how quickly he can pick that part up.
Now, again, this is the good news about this happening with still 1 game left in the season is I think Connor McGovern would be a guy that, hey, I'm fine playing all 65 snaps next week against Washington at center, right? Give him as many snaps as possible. And those 2 guys that he's going to be facing there are going to be just as good as the ones he's playing against Tampa Bay. Let him, kind of work out some of the kinks kind of going into the playoffs.
Yeah, Tyler Smith's got to get his feet wet playing left guard again. I mean, I think he did pretty well tonight. I think he had a holding call at one point, but I think for the most part, he's obviously spent a lot of time in training camp playing the position. I do think it may take him a little bit of time just to kind of swing back in and get his feet wet there. But if that's the long-term solution there, then so be it. And that's what I do. Yeah.
I want to talk more about the offense in the game. We've got to talk about Dak Prescott. In the interceptions, which
we're just going to be talking about it. So I know. You can't say anything about it.
All right. But before we do that, a public service announcement from NHTSA. Did you know that driving high is considered driving under the influence? That's right. Driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every state, even in states where marijuana is legal. That means driving high could get you a DUI. And if you think law enforcement officers can't tell when you're driving high, you're wrong, because your friends can tell, your coworkers can tell, your parents can tell, everyone can tell. So what makes you think that an officer that's trained to do this won't be able to tell? Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time down and change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive but you're high, you're not. Because the bottom line is, if you feel different, you drive different. And driving high is driving under the influence. So remember, drive high, get a DUI, paid for by NHTSA. All right. Let's talk about Dak in this game. He has 3 turnovers, 1 interception that he just threw a terrible ball to the middle of Peyton Hendershot's chest that happened to bounce off his, shoulder, or right between his numbers.
It didn't even bounce. It was like a rugby try. I was just on with Peter, and I just was saying, like, it's like unlike anything. It hit him right in the chest, and then it's like he grabbed it with his chest and then shovel passed it over to the safety. It was nuts, man. It was crazy to watch.
The second interception to Kevin Byard was a bad throw. Now, I understand what happened. There was a guy that jumped in front of Dalton Schultz, so he was trying to throw behind him. Probably just didn't see Byard. Whatever. That's a bad throw. Anyway, you slice it. The fumble on the center quarterback exchange, I kind of just want to put that on both of them. It seems like it was a little shallow from Tyler Biadasz, but
he pulled back. He pulled back a little quick.
Dak pulled out a little bit there too. So 3 turnovers. Obviously, they've got to clean that up, but it's just more of the same. Some are on Dak. One clearly isn't. The other one's up for debate.
And again, I think my takeaway from this is, I'm not pulling back on Dak. Like, he continues to play good football in spite of having these turnovers. I would rather Dak play like this and score a bunch of points than try to go into a shell and become too conservative. I mean, that's
because tonight's a perfect example, right? You have 2 interceptions and you still score 27 points. I would be concerned, Landon, if like they're only scoring 20 points a game and he's having these turnovers, right? Yeah. But if you're going to be scoring 27, 30, 34 points a game, you can overcome it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look, I mean, I think it's going to be, you change the kind of calculus there depending on your opponent. So, that maybe you don't take some of those same chances or at the same time or in the same way when you're playing Tampa in the wild card game. But I just think that, we mentioned it last week, I think, even that Dak led the league in non-turnover worthy plays that turned into interceptions, right? Where plays that he threw the ball where it was supposed to go and it clanks off of a receiver's hands and into a safety's hands. Look, another thing we talk about all the time is turnover aggression. That works both positive and negative. Like at some point, it's just going to stop. It's just not going to continue to happen week to week. And that's kind of where I was at halftime. I think I tweeted something out to the extent of, I just don't believe that the Cowboys are going to average one turnover a drive for the rest of the game. Therefore, I believe the Cowboys will likely win this game because they were the better team. And I think, you're not going to be able to get away with that against better teams, obviously. But I also think you're not going to try the same things against better teams either.
And it's why I wasn't nervous at halftime. I was talking to my friend Elliot Harrison, and I said the Cowboys had 3 turnovers in the first half and are still winning by 4.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pretty good indication that you're going to be fine the rest of the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously it's not something you want. No. But you have to look at how well the offense is operating on every other level. That obviously is more than making up for it, and you don't really want to put a governor on that. You don't want to put a tamper on that.
Let's talk about the run game a little bit. Obviously, they struggled a little bit to run the ball. Malik Davis, 10 for 39. Ezekiel Elliott, 19 carries for 37 yards. Dak, 3 for 11. They just didn't block very well. Like I wish I had something more insightful to say, but they just didn't block well. They ran a lot on first and second down, and I think it was purposeful. Yeah. I think Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy were trying to just keep that clock running.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and I think Tennessee knew that Dallas was going to do that.
Yeah, I think that they were running into plays that they would have checked out of at times, honestly. And I think there were times that they had bad numbers and they were still running the football. I think they were just trying to kill this game because they knew the longer that they were out on the field, the less good things that could happen. I mean, honestly, I think if you could have gone to both teams beforehand, looked at the field, and legally have said, "Hey, should we just call this thing off?" Until now, I think both
the
teams
rain
would've.
didn't help. Right, it was raining pregame and it's just choppy. It was not great conditions for a well played game.
And I think some people, you and I were talking, and I think some people took this the wrong way. But I said the best thing the Cowboys can do is win this ugly. And what I meant was just run the football just so it's safe. I felt like, anytime that the Cowboys were dropping back to pass, that, I'm just concerned about, the offensive tackles making the wrong movement and knee buckling. And I just felt like if you could get, physical forward momentum in the run game, it was just the safest way to cut the amount of time that players are on the field. And obviously, I think when you're being the physical enforcer as opposed to being reactive, I think it's better for the chances of you kind of tearing a ligament or twisting an ankle, that sort of thing.
All right, we're going to talk about the offensive line later next week. Once we kind of get some time to go back and watch the film, we'll talk about Jason Peters, how he played at left tackle, what Tyler Smith looked like at left guard, Connor McGovern obviously at center. Still curious to see how Tyron Smith looked at right tackle. This is his 3rd game, so just wait on that. But let's talk about the receivers a little bit.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb, 11 catches for 100 yards, lower yards per catch than we're used to seeing, but 3rd straight game with 100 yards. Thought he was really good in this game again.
Yeah, and I think just kind of shows you the continued progression he's had there. He's eaten a ton of targets and converting them. I mean, again, that's 14 targets and 11 receptions. That I'll take it. And I just think as long as you're continuing to convert a lot of these. Schultz had another big night as well with some of the conversions. And I love the kind of mixture that we saw of T.Y. Hilton and Michael Gallup kind of filling in that 2nd and 3rd role, right? As you see them both getting healthy targets. You're seeing T.Y. Hilton really being focused on in 3rd down situations, whether it's as a deep target to kind of open things up underneath or to be the guy they throw the ball down the field to. or underneath, and we talked about that, right? Is that he can do both of those things. We had kind of a middle range attacker in CeeDee Lamb. He was so very efficient at that. What the Cowboys needed to kind of counterbalance that a little bit more was somebody who could take a pass underneath and cut it upfield for a first down, like you saw T.Y. Hilton do. Someone to get down the field to draw penalties or to get catch big passes. Obviously, Hilton did some of that, and then we saw a little bit of Gallup being involved too, just kind of making contested, continued catches, toe taps on the sideline, being there when Dak needed it in breakdown of plays. The progression of where we're seeing the wide receivers going, despite some key notable bad examples. I think for the most part, where you're seeing it going and where they're fitting T.Y. Hilton into this group is really, really encouraging.
Yep. First drive of the game, the Cowboys had a 3rd and 5, and Tennessee was in off coverage, and they just run like a speed out with T.Y. Hilton on the left-hand side. Yeah. And he's so good at just getting to that spot, and Dak put it on him, and there you go, conversion. That's what they just didn't have on this offense outside of CeeDee Lamb. They just didn't have that other guy that you trusted to be in the right spot at the right time. That was encouraging to see. One play about CeeDee Lamb that I wanted to mention. Wasn't a big play, wasn't a first down or anything, but this is his value. Late in the 3rd quarter, Cowboys had a 3rd and 15 at Tennessee's 37. And I mean, they probably would have kicked the field goal there anyways from Brett Maher, but it would have been hard with the field the way it was.
Yeah.
The Cowboys throw a wide receiver screen. Dak actually throws a bad ball. It's like 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. CeeDee has to kind of reach back and catches it. Makes 3 different moves, gets 10 yards, and now it's a 45-yard field goal. Rather than a 54-yard field goal, it's a 10-yard field goal. That's the value of CeeDee Lamb, and I think that's why he's become such a big and valuable part of this offense.
Yeah, I mean, there's just times when you need a big play, and it's going to CeeDee Lamb, and they can't seem to stop it. They really haven't. It doesn't seem like very many teams have successfully covered CeeDee Lamb in that over route from the slot. It's just an incredibly difficult route to cover by a receiver that's physically difficult to cover, especially from the slot.
Last thing on the offense. You could tell a little bit that the Cowboys missed Tony Pollard in this game. Not so much in the running game because the run blocking was so bad, but like on just the little flare routes and that kind of stuff where you can dump it to him behind the line of scrimmage and he can get you 9 yards really quickly. I think that's the part of the game that they missed from Pollard.
Yeah. And I think, they like to use Pollard in kind of creative ways too. And it felt like the run game in general was kind of was very stagnant and just kind of very not very
it wasn't creative.
Yeah, it wasn't creative. It felt like, honestly, it felt like the Cowboys offensively were holding back, whether in their play calling even, and I think that they still won by 14 points, and I think that it's because they can, they don't want to necessarily go all out and kind of continue to put more tape out there on their kind of more exotic run schemes. When they don't necessarily need to use them in order to win this ball game. So
I kind of hope Pollard doesn't play next week either, especially on that field in Washington. Like unless the Cowboys still have a shot to win the division, I don't need to see Pollard. And frankly, I probably don't need to see Zeke next week anyways. Just play Olsen, play Malik Davis, give those young kids a lot of run, and let Zeke and Pollard look fresh for the playoffs.
Yeah, the thing we're going to have to, and we'll have conversations about this next week, is you run into a roster management problem when you try to sit too many people. So we'll have a whole conversation about that. But, as many of these people that they can, we have to see how things go Sunday with the Eagles and Saints. But as many people, if they're going to sit people, they're going to have to figure out a way to sit as many of these folks, hopefully, as they can, while still being able to field a team that can actually, be eligible to play a football game on Sunday.
All right, let's talk about the defense. But before we do that, I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball, the World Cup. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, and we know that you do because you're listening to one right now, you can even find those at Bet Online as well. It's always the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, Landon, the Cowboys allow 13 points in this game to Josh Dobbs. At times, Tennessee moved the ball well. They totaled a little over 300 yards. How do you think the Cowboys defense played as a whole in this game?
I thought they played well. I mean, it's just I think at times they gave up a couple of big plays where on a reverse, one. And it's interesting what this crew was calling and not calling. I mean, Tennessee obviously got the worst end of it for sure, but some of the stuff was just very inconsistent. But I felt like there was a couple of big plays where they let guys get loose. They had a penalty, for the most part, on a down by down basis, I thought that the Cowboys defense was killing Tennessee, and I also think that you take away, the turnovers the Cowboys offense had in the first half, and we would be talking about how the Dallas defense kind of shut the door early to this game with their turnovers, including a sack fumble, and I think that if they could find a way to kind of tighten up, no pun intended, tighten up the kind of big play production these teams are having at times. The numbers would look even better. And even as it stands, they only allowed 13 points. And I understand it was against a ton of backups, but like you mentioned before, they go into the entire week thinking they're playing Malik Willis, and then suddenly you've got Josh Dobbs, who's kind of a different style of quarterback. So, which is now the second time that this has happened to the Cowboys. It happened with Houston as well. So, I thought for the most part they played well. The pass rush seemed to be there at time a little bit better against the back. Obviously the backups that the Titans were playing with. We got a sack fumble, which was nice. Parsons was hitting the quarterback a ton, but still couldn't get a sack. So, and I think once he gets that wrap off, that'll help a little bit more. But overall, I thought they played okay.
There was just one touchdown drive that makes you feel like, because there was 14 plays, 71 yards. Other than that, the field goal they got before halftime was because of the interception. They got one ridiculous play from Treylon Burks. They got one big play to Racey McMath down the field. That didn't even lead to any points.
Yeah.
And that was really just about it. After the touchdown drive, here was Tennessee's drives the rest of the game. 6 plays, 30 yards, punt. 2 plays, 4 yards, interception, 8 plays, 20 yards, turnover on downs. 4 plays, 26 yards, end of game. They got one first down, and that was basically the end of his drive. So it was fine. They could have been better. Trevon Diggs picks off Josh Dobbs and takes it to the house. We're probably talking way different about this defense because I think they ended up getting a field goal later.
Curse had one too, where he ended up tackling the guy on a screen, and if he had his head up, he would have caught the deflection right into his hand and taken.
So Dallas got 2 turnovers. Nahshon Wright had an interception. It was fine. This wasn't the best defensive performance they've had all year, but it was far from the worst.
Yeah, if it was 13 points against a normal NFL team, you'd be feeling great about it. But because it was a lot of backups they were playing, you kind of expect more. But it's fine. It's not bad. It's just it's not noteworthy either.
I mean, exactly. That's why I'm not too worried about it now. We'll see about some injuries. J-Ron Curtis got a little bit banged up. Malik Hooker got banged up. I think both of those guys came back.
I think all of them came back.
Sam Williams got banged up. I know Sam Williams came back.
Sam Williams came back. It was Curse, Wright, and Hooker all got banged up, and then Sam Williams. And I'm pretty sure that all of them. The only one I'm not sure about is Hooker, but I'm pretty sure that all of them came back.
Yeah. The Nahshon Wright spot is going to be terrifying the rest of the way. He got an interception in this game. He has a couple of nice coverage plays, but man, I'll be lying if I didn't think of this game. Oh, Tom Brady's just going to look at Nahshon Wright all game long on those 7-yard comebacks to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. That spot makes me really nervous as we go into the playoffs.
I mean, look, we'll talk about it that week, but I kind of like Nahshon Wright's matchup against some of these bigger wide receivers. He's so rangy that it can make up for
the down the field stuff. I don't worry about. It's just that, is he going to give up 7-yard cushions over and over to Tom Brady, who can only throw the ball 7 yards on every single play?
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
That's the best part about it.
We
We'll find out.
got some time before that matchup. So, overall takeaways from this game: Cowboys won by double digits in a sloppy game on Thursday Night Football. Have I told you how much I hate Thursday Night Football? Sucks. It's the absolute worst.
And they really shouldn't do this kind of schedule to anybody. The Cowboys, no one should play those kind of back-to-back short weeks, right? Where the Cowboys played a Saturday game and then a Thursday game. Like it's just too short. And the Cowboys kind of did it twice with Thanksgiving. So it's really just brutal physically for them.
Yeah. No, but the good news is the Cowboys have
Long
10
week.
days to get ready for this Washington game. We'll
or
see.
not, depending or not, depending
or
on
not, right?
Yeah.
Or not, just depending on what happens this week with Philadelphia, which is going to add a really weird wrinkle to kind of the end of the season. But
yeah,
we'll talk about that next week. So that is it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. We'd like to let you know about the Locked On Sports Today podcast. We want you to make that your second listen of the day. Peter Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes or less. Get the analysis and opinions before anyone else with our local and national experts and insiders like Landon, who just jumped on the show before we came. Yeah. Locked On Sports Today podcast available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Same places that you get the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your victory Friday. Enjoy week 17.
Please enjoy it.
Never apologize for wins.
Never.
We'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.